The colony of Erythra had always been a place of human courage and stubbornness, built on a planet far from Earth, with skies painted in hues of violet and green, and landscapes that shimmered under two suns. It was a test of humanity's resilience. The settlers had arrived decades ago, armed with technology, hope, and a dream to make a new world their own. Among them, Kale was different from most. He was a biologist, not a soldier or engineer, and he found more joy in examining the strange flora and alien creatures than in building structures or planning defenses. But even in his fascination with life, he had never expected to encounter something as extraordinary as her. The alien woman lived at the edge of the floating crystal forests of Zarif, a place that few humans dared to explore. The trees there were not ordinary. They floated above the ground, shimmering with colors that shifted with the light, and their roots formed intricate lattices that glowed faintly in the twilight. Birds with crystalline wings and creatures that seemed to be made of living light darted between them. And in this otherworldly forest, she moved as if the world itself bent around her. Kale had first noticed her weeks ago. He had been observing a species of luminous vine when he saw a figure gliding silently among the floating crystals. At first, he thought it was a trick of light or a reflection from the crystal canopy. But then he saw her clearly. Her skin shimmered like liquid silver under the twin suns, her eyes glowing softly with the pale light of the auroras that danced across the horizon. And her hair flowed around her like tendrils of starlight, moving and twisting as though it had a life of its own. She was breathtaking, and Kale felt an instinctive pull toward her. A curiosity so strong, it was almost painful. The settlers whispered stories about her. Some said she was dangerous, a being whose powers could harm anyone who came near. Others claimed she was cursed, a guardian of the crystal forests who would strike down intruders. Most simply called her the alien woman, and avoided her completely. But Kale did not feel fear. He felt fascination and a strange longing. Unlike others, he wanted to know her, to understand the life she had led alone on this strange world. One morning, Kale was studying a rare flowering plant at the edge of the crystal forests. The sun had risen just enough to make the forest sparkle like a sea of diamonds, and he was noting the movement of tiny luminescent insects across the petals when the sky darkened suddenly. The wind picked up with unnatural force, and before he could react, a storm, unlike any he had seen, swept over the forest. The crystals rattled and spun, some breaking loose and spiraling through the air like deadly projectiles. Kale stumbled, trying to shield himself from the flying debris, and panic began to take hold. It was then he saw her. She appeared from the edge of the forest, moving effortlessly through the gale. Her silver skin seemed to catch the light of the storm, and her hair streamed behind her like ribbons of energy. Without hesitation, she extended her hand toward him. In that instant, Kale knew that he had only one choice. He grabbed her hand, and a surge of warmth passed through him. She guided him through the chaos, stepping with precision and grace that defied the violent winds. Together, they reached a crystalline cave that jutted out from the forest floor. Inside the cave, the storm's fury became a distant roar. Kale looked around, still trembling, and saw the alien woman in full view for the first time. Her presence was overwhelming, yet not in a threatening way. It was the quiet kind of power that demanded respect. Her hair fell around her shoulders like strands of pure light, and as she moved, the strands shimmered and twisted, brushing against his arm. Kale felt an electric sensation where her hair touched him, a warmth that spread through his chest and seemed to speak without words. She spoke then, her voice soft and melodic, but with a resonance that seemed to echo in the cave itself. "You are brave, human. Not many would face the storm alone." Kale, still catching his breath, managed to nod. I wasn't afraid. I wanted to see." Her eyes, glowing softly, held his gaze for a long moment. It was as if she was searching his mind, measuring his intentions. Then, slowly, she reached out again, and Kale's hand brushed against her hair. The moment was fleeting, yet it carried a weight neither of them had expected. He felt an understanding passing between them, something deeper than words, something ancient and unspoken. Over the following days, Kael found himself returning to the crystal forests. He watched her from a distance at first, learning the rhythm of her life, the way she interacted with the plants and animals of Zareth. She did not fear him, but she also did not approach him. She existed on the edge of the human world, and yet close enough to draw him in. Kael began leaving small gifts for her samples of rare earth flowers he had brought with him, notes describing his observations of the local flora, and sometimes simple drawings of the creatures that inhabited the forest. Each day, he hoped she would notice, and each day, she did. Then, one evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon and the forest glowed with a surreal violet light, she appeared near him. Kael had been examining a patch of luminous moss when he sensed her presence. She stepped into the clearing silently, her hair floating around her like a living halo. Kael rose slowly, unsure of what to say, but she simply tilted her head, and for the first time, Kael felt that she was acknowledging not just his presence, but him as a person. "Why do you come here?" she asked. Her voice carried no judgment, only curiosity. Kael swallowed, realizing that this question was heavier than it seemed. "Because I want to understand," he said. "Not just the forest, not just the plants. I want to understand you." Her eyes widened slightly, and then, to his surprise, she smiled. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but it transformed her face. For the first time, Kael saw the human-like emotions hidden beneath the alien exterior: loneliness, hope, and a longing for connection. That night, they spoke for hours in the cave, though the words were few. Much of their communication was through gestures, through shared understanding, through the simple act of being near each other. Kael learned that she had lived in isolation for centuries, not because she had chosen to, but because no one had ever reached out to her. Humanity, she had learned, was often blind to what it did not understand, and many feared what was unfamiliar. Kael felt a surge of admiration and determination. He realized that this alien woman, with her flowing starlight hair and silver skin, was not only remarkable for her appearance but for her intelligence, her grace, and her resilience. She had survived in a world that was unforgiving, and she had remained unbroken, untouched by the fear and prejudice of humans. And he knew that he could not let her remain alone. The first touch of her hair had changed everything. It was a connection that neither fully understood, a bridge between their worlds. And in that moment, Kael felt the weight of a promise he had not spoken aloud. He would be the first human to see her, not as an alien, but as someone worth loving, worth protecting, and worth knowing. As the night stretched on, the storm passed, leaving the forest quiet and sparkling under the twin moons. Kael and the alien woman sat together in the crystalline cave, silent but connected. For the first time, the impossible seemed possible. The boundary between human and alien, between loneliness and companionship, had begun to fade, and Kael knew that the journey ahead would be filled with danger, discovery, and perhaps even love. But he also knew that he was ready to face it, as long as he faced it with her. And so, on the edge of the crystal forests of Zareth, under the alien sky of a distant world, humanity's courage met the beauty of the unknown. Kael had dared to reach out, and in doing so, he had awakened something that no one had dared to imagine: the possibility of understanding, connection, and the beginning of a story that neither human nor alien would ever forget. The days after the storm were different. The crystal forests of Zareth glowed more softly in the twin suns' light, and the air seemed filled with a quiet tension, as if the planet itself was aware that something had changed. Kael returned to the forests every day, carrying samples, sketches, and his notebook filled with observations. But now, he was not alone in his work. The alien woman, whom he had begun to think of only as Liara, had started to appear near him more often. She moved with a quiet curiosity, observing his tools and notes, and sometimes touching the plants he had collected with delicate fingers. Kael noticed that her presence brought a calmness, a focus, to the forest that he had never experienced before. One morning, Kale ventured deeper into the forest than he ever had. The floating crystal trees grew taller and denser, their roots forming intricate bridges over pools of glowing water. Strange creatures swam through the liquid, their forms reflecting the light like living prisms. Kale's heart raced with excitement as he recorded every detail. He had discovered a species of vine that pulsed with light in response to sound, and he carefully noted its reactions to the notes he played on a small flute he carried for research. Liara appeared silently, stepping onto a root bridge without a sound. Her hair, shimmering in the morning light, brushed against the glowing vines. The plants reacted instantly, their light intensifying and forming patterns that mirrored the movement of her hair. Kale watched in awe. "Your hair, it affects them," he said. Almost in disbelief, Liara tilted her head. Her eyes, glowing faintly, held a depth that Kale could not fully understand. She moved closer to the plants and laid a hand gently on a cluster of luminescent flowers. The light spread through the vines, forming shapes and waves, as if the forest was communicating with her. Kale realized that she was not just living in harmony with this alien world, she was part of it. She understood it in a way humans could not, and it humbled him. They spent hours together in silence, Kale observing, Liara interacting with the forest. Sometimes he spoke, describing what he had learned about earth plants. And she listened, nodding or tilting her head, as if trying to translate his words into something she could share back with him. Slowly, a pattern emerged. Kale began to understand that she had an intelligence that went beyond human knowledge, a mind capable of perceiving connections and patterns invisible to the human eye. And she, in turn, seemed to recognize Kale as someone different from the other humans. He was not afraid. He did not judge. And he genuinely wanted to understand. One afternoon, while examining a crystalline pond, Kale noticed movement in the water. Strange, delicate creatures with translucent bodies and glowing eyes emerged from the depths. They swirled around him, curious but cautious. Liara stepped closer and extended her hand. The creatures reacted immediately, moving in harmonious patterns around her fingers. Kale marveled at the sight. "You communicate with them," he whispered, awe in his voice. Liara's gaze met his, and he could feel the unspoken connection, but the forest held dangers too. As they ventured further, Kale noticed shadows moving among the floating trees. Predatory creatures, long and sleek with mirrored skin, watched from the canopy. Liara's posture changed, her hair rising slightly as if sensing the threat. Kale's heart pounded. He had never seen her show fear before, and the sudden tension reminded him that even she was not invincible. The predators were fast, capable of moving silently across the roots and branches, their mirrored bodies reflecting the light in confusing patterns. Without warning, one of the creatures lunged from a root bridge, its jaws snapping. Kale froze, unsure what to do. But Liara moved with incredible speed, grabbing a glowing vine and swinging it in an arc. The creature skidded off balance and fell into the pond below, splashing water everywhere. Kale's hands trembled. "You saved me," he said, voice shaking. Liara simply nodded, her glowing eyes fixed on the remaining predators until they retreated into the shadows. The encounter left Kale both terrified and exhilarated. He realized that this world was not a peaceful paradise, it was alive, and it could be deadly. Yet Liara, in her calm and precise way, seemed completely attuned to it. She was not just surviving, she was thriving. And Kale, standing beside her, felt the stirrings of a courage he had never known he possessed. As the days passed, their bond deepened. Kale taught her small things about humans, how music could stir emotions, how stories could convey memory and hope. In return, she showed him how to move through the forest without disturbing it, how to read the vibrations in the crystalline roots, and how to listen to the subtle hum of life in the alien trees. Every lesson brought them closer, and Kale began to feel something he had never expected. A profound admiration that grew into affection, and an undeniable sense of trust. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the forest, Liara led Kale to a hidden valley deep within the crystal woods. The ground glowed softly, lit by phosphorescent plants that cast gentle light across the landscape. In the center, a pool of liquid crystal reflected the stars above. Kale had never seen anything so beautiful. He could see his reflection beside hers, her hair catching the moonlight. And for the first time, he realized how deeply he had come to care for her. Liara knelt by the pool and extended her hand. "Look," she said softly. And Kale followed her gaze. The pool rippled with images, not of this world, but of faraway galaxies, planets he had never seen, and stars he could not name. He realized then that she could see and sense things beyond human perception, that her mind and her connection to the universe were vast and profound. Kyle felt both awe and fear. He was standing beside a being far more capable and aware than he could ever imagine. But there was no fear in her eyes for him. Instead, there was something else, a quiet invitation. Slowly, hesitantly, Kale reached out and touched her hair. The strands were cool yet pulsing with energy, and a sensation of warmth and clarity filled him. He could feel a flow of life, of memory, and of thought connecting them. Liara did not pull away. Instead, she leaned slightly closer, as if allowing him to glimpse her world. In that moment, Kale understood that the barriers between human and alien, between isolation and connection, were breaking down. The following days brought new discoveries and challenges. Kale noticed strange patterns in the forest, a kind of rhythm in the way the plants moved and reacted to the moon's rise and set. He and Liara worked together to trace these patterns, finding hidden pathways and secret clearings filled with life that seemed to exist nowhere else. Each day was an adventure, filled with both beauty and danger. One afternoon, Kale accidentally stepped on a hidden root that triggered a trap-like mechanism. Sharp crystal spikes shot upward from the ground, narrowly missing him. Liara reacted instantly, pulling him to safety. Her movements were precise, controlled, and swift. Kale's heart raced, and he realized that even in this world where she was in control, there were limits. Life here demanded respect and attention, and it reminded him that bravery alone was not enough. Afterward, they rested by a pool of luminous water. Kale was exhausted, but exhilarated. "I never imagined life could be like this," he said, "so full of danger, but also so full of wonder." Liara's hair flowed over the water, reflecting the soft glow, and she nodded. "This world tests those who enter," she said, "but it rewards those who seek, who observe, who understand." Kale smiled, realizing that she was speaking not only of the forest, but of life itself, and perhaps even of him. As the sun set, Kale felt a strange calm. He had come to the crystal forests seeking knowledge, and he had found something far greater. Friendship, trust, and a connection that transcended the limits of human understanding. He knew that he had a long journey ahead, and that the forest and Liara held mysteries that would challenge him again and again. But for the first time, he also understood that the adventure was worth it. In the quiet moments before night fell completely, Kyle and Liara sat together on a root bridge, watching the glow of the forest around them. He reached out again, touching her hair gently. She leaned into him slightly, and the connection between them grew stronger. Words were not needed. The simple act of being present, of sharing the moment, was enough. And as the stars began to twinkle in the alien sky, Kale realized something profound. Humans were often described as fragile, small, and limited. Yet here he was, standing beside a being of unimaginable power and grace, not as an inferior, but as a partner, a friend, someone who could reach across the boundaries of species and understanding. Humanity, he thought, had a strength that was not in muscles or weapons, but in courage, curiosity, and the willingness to connect. The bond they had begun to forge was fragile, yes, but it was real. And Kale knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, predators, storms, or the unknown, he would face them with Liara. Together, they would explore the mysteries of the crystal forests, uncover the secrets of her world, and perhaps even discover something greater. the possibility of love, understanding, and a unity that could bridge the galaxy itself. And so, as the twin moons cast their silver light across the alien forest, Kale felt a hope that he had never known before. Humanity was not just surviving on this distant world. It was capable of greatness, of connection, of forging bonds that could endure across space and time. And in that moment, with Liara by his side, he knew that they were just beginning a story that would be remembered for generations. An adventure of courage, discovery, and the extraordinary power of reaching out and touching another being, no matter how different they might seem. The crystal forests of Zareth had always been alive, but that day, they seemed restless. A strange tension pulsed through the floating roots and glowing vines, a vibration that Kale could feel in his chest even before he noticed the shadows moving among the trees. He had been walking with Liara deeper into the forest than ever before, following the hidden pathways she had taught him to recognize. The forest was beautiful as always, but today there was a sense of urgency. A quiet warning that something was approaching. "Do you feel it?" Kale asked, his voice low, almost afraid to break the forest's natural rhythm. Liara's eyes glowed faintly in the soft light, and her hair lifted slightly, as if sensing the unseen currents. "Yes," she said. "The forest speaks of danger. Something is coming." Kale's stomach tightened. He had grown used to the forest's dangers, to predators and treacherous paths, but this felt different. The vibration was not random. It was deliberate, calculated, like a predator moving toward its target. He glanced at Liara, who was scanning the surroundings with intense focus. "What is it?" he asked. She did not answer immediately. Instead, she led him to a small clearing, where the light from the twin suns filtered through the floating trees, casting fractured patterns on the ground. The air seemed heavier here, charged with energy. Liara knelt and placed her hands on the roots of a giant crystal tree. The roots pulsed under her fingers, sending ripples through the clearing. Kale watched in awe, realizing that she was communicating with the forest itself. "They sense it too," she said quietly. "The predators are not the only threat. Something else is coming. Something that does not belong here." Before Kale could ask more, a distant rumble shook the ground. The light in the forest flickered, as if the forest itself was shivering. Then, from beyond the crystal trees, a wave of shadows surged forward. They were not like the predators Kale had seen before. These beings were massive, metallic, and unfamiliar. Their movements precise and unhesitating. They descended on the forest like an invading force, crushing roots and vines as they advanced. Kale froze. He had never seen technology like this in the colony. These were not native creatures. Liara's hair flared with energy, and she stepped in front of Kale, raising her hands. The forest responded instantly. Vines twisted, roots surged, and glowing plants bent to form barriers. The invaders pushed forward, their metallic bodies indifferent to the forest's defenses. Kale realized then that this was more than a threat, it was an attack, a challenge that could destroy everything Liara had protected for centuries. He had to act. "What can we do?" he shouted over the noise of cracking roots and snapping crystals. Liara's eyes met his. "Trust me," she said, her voice calm, almost unnervingly so. "And do not falter." Close, she moved like a conductor of a living orchestra. Her hair flowed around her, brushing the roots and vines, sending pulses of energy that made the forest itself respond. Trees twisted, roots shifted, and glowing plants released bursts of light that blinded the invaders momentarily. Kale watched, amazed and terrified. He had never seen such control, such unity with a living world. Liara was not just surviving here, she was commanding it. But the invaders adapted quickly. They pressed forward, using weapons that emitted cutting beams and explosive pulses. One of the beams struck a tree near Kale, shattering it into fragments that flew dangerously close. Kale ducked and realized that staying passive was not enough. He had knowledge of the forest, its hidden pathways, and its reactions. Gathering courage, He started guiding the forest's defenses, shouting directions to Liara as she moved among the trees, her hair glowing brighter with every pulse. Together, they formed a rhythm. Kale's human intuition complemented Liara's alien understanding. He predicted the invaders' movements, and she amplified the forest's response. Vines wrapped around metallic legs, roots lifted to trip them, and glowing spores burst in the air, temporarily blinding their enemies. For a moment, it seemed as if the invaders might be repelled. Then, a massive figure emerged from the shadows. It was larger than the rest, with armor that gleamed like black crystal and eyes that glowed red. It moved with deliberate speed, cutting through the forest defenses with ease. Kale felt his heart sink. The creature was intelligent, and it was calculating. It had come to conquer, not to explore. Liara stepped forward to face it. "Stay behind me," she shouted. And Kale obeyed, though fear clawed at him. She raised her hands, and her hair flared like a river of stars. Energy surged through the roots and vines, forming a barrier between them and the creature. The black crystal invader struck, but Liara countered with bursts of energy that caused the creature to stagger. Sparks flew as the metal collided with her control of the forest. Kale knew he could not just watch. He had an idea, risky as it was. Reaching into his pack, he pulled out a device he had been developing to communicate with the forest through subtle energy pulses. He activated it, sending vibrations into the roots beneath their feet. The forest responded immediately, and he felt the energy surge through his body, connecting him to Liara and the forest. For the first time, he understood what she felt, how the forest thought. "Now," Liara shouted, and together, they directed the forest's energy toward the invaders. Roots surged upward like living spears, vines lashed out, and glowing plants released clouds of blinding light. The metallic creatures faltered, their coordinated movements thrown into chaos. Kale felt a strange exhilaration. This was human courage, amplified by connection, amplified by understanding. The black crystal leader roared, charging at them with lethal speed. Liara's hair wrapped around her, forming a protective shield. Kale felt her energy ripple into him, giving him courage he had never known. Together, they focused on the creature, sending a surge of energy that made the ground quake. The invader stumbled, then collapsed into the glowing roots, immobilized. The remaining forces retreated, unable to withstand the combined power of the forest, Liara, and Kale. Silence fell over the crystal woods, broken only by the gentle hum of the glowing plants and the distant echo of retreating machines. Kale sank to the ground, exhausted, but alive. He looked at Liara, her silver skin glowing faintly in the twin sun's light, her hair settling around her shoulders like liquid starlight. "You did it," Kale said, breathless. "We did it." Liara looked at him, her expression unreadable for a moment, then softened. "You were brave, human," she said. "You did not falter. You reached beyond fear and acted. That is what matters." Kale smiled weakly. "I could not have done it without you. Without the forest." He paused, realizing something profound. "Without you." Her glowing eyes met his, and for the first time, Kale felt a warmth that went beyond the forest, beyond the battle. It was connection, recognition, and trust. He reached out, brushing his hand against her hair. She did not pull away. Instead, she leaned closer, and a wave of energy flowed between them, strengthening their bond. The aftermath of the battle left the forest scarred but alive. Trees were broken, roots torn, and patches of glowing plants trampled. Yet life persisted. Kale and Liara worked together, guiding the forest's recovery, nurturing the wounded plants, and helping injured creatures find safety. It was grueling work, but it strengthened their connection. Each act of care, each shared effort, deepened their understanding of one another. As they rested by a luminous pool, Kale realized how much he had changed. He had come to Zareth seeking knowledge, fascinated by alien life. Now, He had discovered something far greater: courage, partnership, and the power of humans to rise above fear when faced with the unknown. He had also discovered love, an unexpected, beautiful, and fragile bond with someone who was not human, yet deeply human in the ways that mattered most. Liara, sensing his thoughts, leaned against him slightly. Her hair brushed his arm, sending a calm, energizing warmth through his body. Kael reached up and gently touched her hand. She did not move away. Instead, she rested her hand over his, a silent acknowledgement that their connection was mutual. Words were unnecessary. The forest had witnessed their courage, the battle had proven their strength, and their bond had grown in ways neither could have predicted. Night fell over the crystal forest, and the twin moons cast their silver glow across the landscape. Kael and Liara sat together, listening to the hum of life around them, feeling the pulse of the forest beneath their feet. He realized that humanity had a power often overlooked, not in weapons or technology, but in courage, in connection, in the willingness to reach out and trust. That power had allowed him to survive the attack, to stand beside Liara, and to forge a bond that could endure across worlds. In the quiet, Kael made a silent vow. He would protect the forest, the creatures within it, and Liara. He would honor the trust she had placed in him, and he would continue to learn, to grow, and to explore the possibilities of their connection. Humanity had arrived on Zareth, not as conquerors, but as partners, capable of understanding and courage beyond measure. And as the stars twinkled above the alien world, Kael felt a hope that he had never known. The journey was far from over. There would be challenges ahead, more threats, more mysteries, and more tests of courage, but he knew that together, he and Liara could face them. They had survived the first trial, strengthened by understanding, trust, and an unspoken bond that no danger could easily break. For the first time, Kael understood something profound. Human courage, tempered by wisdom and connection, could stand alongside the extraordinary, the alien, and the unknown. And with that realization came a certainty that their story of humans, of Liara, of the crystal forests, was only just beginning. The crystal forests of Zareth had recovered from the previous attack, but the scars remained. Broken roots, shattered branches, and trampled glowing plants reminded Kael and Liara that their world was fragile, and its balance was easily disturbed. Yet even in the aftermath, life pulsed with energy, resilient and strong, as if the forest itself was determined to endure. Kael had never seen such vitality, and each day he spent with Liara made him more aware of humanity's potential, not through machines or weapons, but through courage, understanding, and the willingness to protect what was precious. But Zareth's peace was fragile. Reports from distant monitoring stations indicated that the metallic invaders were not gone. They had retreated, but their signals suggested that a larger force was approaching. Kael and Liara had little time to prepare. They had to understand the forest more deeply, find its hidden strengths, and train themselves to act as one with it. Every day, Kael learned new ways to perceive life in the forest. Guided by Liara, he discovered that each plant, root, and crystal had a rhythm, a pulse, a form of communication that went beyond sound and sight. And with practice, he could feel the forest's intentions, its warnings, and its subtle guidance. One morning, while exploring a valley hidden deep within the floating trees, Kael noticed strange formations in the crystal floor. They were geometric, precise, and unlike anything natural. Liara knelt beside them, her glowing eyes scanning the patterns. "These are markers," she said, "not natural. Someone or something placed them here to navigate the forest. The invaders are planning. They have learned. They will return prepared." Kael felt a chill run down his spine. He realized that the next encounter would be far more dangerous than the first. The invaders were intelligent, organized, and ruthless. But he also knew that humanity had something they did not: adaptability, courage, and the ability to connect with the living world of Zareth. And together, he and Liara could harness that power. They spent the following days strengthening their bond with the forest. Kale learned to move like Liara, to anticipate its reactions, and to guide its energy with her. Together, they mapped hidden pathways, reinforced natural barriers, and even discovered new species of luminous plants that could act as alarms or shields. Kale marveled at the alien woman's intelligence and grace, her ability to perceive threats before they arrived, and her unwavering focus on preserving life. Every lesson brought him closer to her, and he realized that his admiration had grown into something deeper: affection, respect, and a desire to stand beside her in every challenge. Then, one night, the sky turned dark as a shadow passed over the twin moons. A fleet of the metallic invaders descended upon the forest, larger and more organized than before. Kale and Liara had anticipated this, but nothing could prepare them for the sheer scale. Hundreds of machines, sleek and gleaming, moved with precision, cutting through the forest with mechanical efficiency. Their intent was clear: destruction. Liara's hair flared, and she began directing the forest's defenses. Roots surged upward, vines lashed out, and glowing plants released clouds of blinding light. Kale moved beside her, guiding the forest's energy, predicting the invaders' movements, and coordinating attacks. For hours, the battle raged, a symphony of nature and human courage against cold, calculating machines. The forest shook, trees split, and glowing plants were crushed under the invaders' weight. Yet the forest responded, adapting, learning, and fighting back under Liara's guidance and Kale's intuition. Amid the chaos, Kale noticed a massive machine leading the fleet. Its armor was black crystal, its eyes glowing red with precision. This was the same leader from the first attack, now reinforced with more destructive power. It moved like a predator, calculating every step, cutting through the forest's defenses with ease. Kale's heart pounded. He realized that to protect the forest and Liara, they would have to confront it directly. Liara turned to him, her eyes glowing intensely. "Are you ready?" she asked. Kale nodded, his fear tempered by determination. "I am," he said. "We face it together." They advanced toward the leader, moving as one with the forest. Liara's hair flowed around her like a living shield, her energy pulsing through roots and vines, guiding the forest's attacks. Kale added his understanding, predicting the invaders' moves and sending precise bursts of energy through the ground. Together, they formed a rhythm, a connection between human and alien, between forest and life, that the invaders could not anticipate. The leader struck first, sending waves of energy that shattered trees and knocked Kale off balance. Liara caught him, pulling him to safety, her hair glowing brighter than ever. "Stay with me," she commanded. Kale followed instinctively, their bond and trust allowing him to act without hesitation. They maneuvered through the forest, dodging energy blasts, guiding roots and vines to trap smaller machines, and striking with precision. The battle tested every skill they had learned, every lesson from the forest. Kale marveled at Liara's control, her ability to sense threats before they happened, and her unwavering courage in the face of overwhelming odds. He realized that she had survived centuries alone, mastering a world that was unforgiving, and now she had chosen to share that strength with him. Finally, they confronted the leader directly. It loomed over them, its black crystal body reflecting the shattered forest around it. Kale felt a surge of fear, but also of determination. He had seen the power of humanity's courage, and he knew that with Liara, they could overcome even this. He reached out, touching her hair, and a surge of energy flowed through him. Their connection amplified the forest's response, roots and vines lashing out in unison, creating a cage around the invader. Liara stepped forward, her hands raised, her hair flowing like liquid light. She directed all the forest's energy toward the leader, while Kale added his intuition, guiding the final strikes with precision. The leader roared, striking with massive limbs, but it was trapped, unable to move against the coordinated force of the forest and their combined energy. With one final surge, Liara and Kale sent a concentrated pulse through the roots and vines, shattering the invader's armor and sending it crashing into the crystalline ground. Sparks flew, energy arcs illuminated the forest, and silence fell once more. The remaining machines retreated, overwhelmed and defeated. Kale sank to the ground, exhausted but exhilarated. Liara knelt beside him, her glowing eyes softening. "We did it," she said, her voice calm but filled with relief. "The forest is safe." Kale looked around, seeing the forest scarred but alive. Trees were broken, plants crushed, yet life persisted. He realized that the forest, like humanity, was resilient. It could endure, adapt, and grow stronger from each challenge. And he understood something even greater. Humans, too, had that strength. Courage, intelligence, and the willingness to connect could overcome even the most formidable odds. As they walked through the aftermath, Kale and Liara worked together to restore the damaged forest. They guided new growth, nurtured wounded plants, and helped creatures find safety. The bond between them deepened with each act of care, each shared effort. Words were not always needed. Their actions spoke of trust, partnership, and an understanding that transcended species. At night, under the twin moons, Kale and Liara sat by a luminous pool, exhausted but content. The forest hummed softly around them, a living testament to resilience and life. Kale reached out, brushing his hand against Liara's hair. She leaned closer, allowing the touch, and a wave of energy flowed between them, warm and comforting. "You were amazing today," Kale said, voice quiet. "I never imagined I could face something like that. And survive. With you." Liara's glowing eyes met his. "You were brave, Kale. Not just today, but always. You faced fear, and acted with courage, guided by understanding. That is rare. Even among humans, Kale felt a surge of pride and affection. He had come to Zareth seeking knowledge and adventure, but he had found something far greater: connection, trust, and love. He realized that humanity's greatest strength was not in machines or weapons, but in the courage to face the unknown and the willingness to reach out across boundaries. They sat in silence for a long time, listening to the hum of life around them. The forest had survived, the invaders had been repelled, and Kale and Liara had discovered the power of partnership, courage, and mutual trust. The scars on the forest would heal, just as humanity and Liara's bond would continue to grow stronger with each challenge they faced together. Kale reflected on the journey they had shared from the first moment he had touched Liara's hair, to the storm, to the battles they had fought side by side. He realized that every step had been a lesson, not just about the forest or Zareth, but about himself, about humanity, and about the extraordinary potential that came from courage, curiosity, and connection. As the twin moons rose higher in the sky, Kale reached out, taking Liara's hand. Her hair shimmered around them, and he felt the pulse of the forest, the energy of life, and the warmth of a bond that would endure. They did not need words. The connection between them was complete. A silent promise that they would face whatever came next together. And in that moment, Kale understood something profound. Humanity's strength was not just in survival or technology, but in the heart, in the courage to face the unknown, and in the willingness to reach out, touch, and connect. That strength had allowed them to protect the forest, to overcome the invaders, and to forge a bond that transcended species and worlds. The journey was far from over. Zareth still held mysteries, new threats, and wonders yet to be discovered. But Kale knew that with Liara by his side, and with the courage and determination of humanity guiding him, they could face anything. The crystal forests would thrive, the bond between human and alien would deepen, and together, they would continue a story of courage, connection, and the extraordinary power of reaching across the unknown. And so, under the twin moons of Zareth, Kale and Liara stood together, ready to explore the mysteries of their world. Their hearts and minds united. Humanity had arrived not as conquerors, but as partners, capable of greatness, bravery, and love. And in that moment, Kale knew that the story they had begun would be remembered, not just for the battles fought, but for the courage, understanding, and connection that defined it.